All right, so you wanted to start with the Lewandowski.
Hold on, yes, we're gonna, so I mentioned, let me just do a little intro, that Lewandowski wrote settings that are very, 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 very famous. I asked Joyce this morning if she'd come in to talk about them. She didn't have time today, but she might come in and maybe even next week if you were interested to talk. These are, I mentioned that if you grew up in the Reform movement of a certain generation, you heard this I'm not sure which Lewandowski you has. Lewandowski set for the beginning of the Psalm 24 and for the end of Psalm 24. There are two different pieces. The end of Psalm 24, the Su Sha'arim, I know that Chazan Hirsch asked me about it. So this is the setting that the Reform movement sang, and it's used in different places, as I mentioned, including on Rosh Hashanah. The words are in the Malchiyot section of Musaf, but it's also done on Rosh Chodesh, as I said, and on Yontiv. And if you're a regular davener like Saul Zalkin, there's a way that people daven through Su Sharim, that's a little bit elevated because the words are very majestic, but it's a very common part of the Torah service, right, Saul? It's like, do you want to say something, Saul, about it?
It's the psalm that they use when they return the Torahs to the Ark after the readings to replace the psalm that we do on Shabbat.
Exactly. So a regular davener knows this psalm inside and out because of that, just like we would on Shabbat sing the psalm to return the Torah.
We used to have a member, may rest in peace, Jack Katska, who, when he was the Baal Tefillah in the morning service, had a way of singing Su Sharim that nobody could imitate. It was just unbelievable.
There are many settings for Su Sharim. So, Harold, I'm not sure which one you have. So I sent you two Lewandowskis, one for the beginning of the psalm and one for the end of the psalm.
The beginning is the one with everyone in the little boxes, and the end is the one with everybody.
I don't remember.
All right, let's try this and see. You just tell me if it's not the right one.
We'll open with one and we'll close with the other. This is Lewandowski, the great German composer. We do a lot of Lewandowski in there.
Okay,
this is the opening of the psalm. Okay, these are the first words of the psalm. Not hearing anything, Harold. No sound. No sound.
my God, that
Okay,
should have
I
come,
apologize for that. Okay, we can turn them off.
should have come with Dramamine. Oh my
Oh
God.
my God, that was a little woo. Okay, that was. I just looked for Lewandowski for the big opening of this.
Oh,
I apologize. I hadn't watched it all the way through. And Zamir Kurel, I usually love their their music. So that. Okay, I didn't like the moving boxes. That was not a good. But you got a sense of the glorious, majestic Lewandowski, and we'll listen to the other Lewandowski. Is not this moving boxes thing. Sorry about that, but. So this psalm is very, very famous, used, and I understand also in Christian liturgy, but for Jews, a really important psalm. So let's look at Levi. We're going to go through a couple of translations today and tomorrow. And yeah, sorry about that. But you've noticed some of the virtual choirs over this time, they thought it would be interesting. Other people have done that too, where they've got the moving parts, and oh my God, just have the people stand there and sing. We want the music to be the thing, not the watching the moving boxes make you dizzy. Okay,
what happens when some volunteer says, I know how to use that software. I use all the buttons. Which one did you want first, Rabbi?
let's just go through Levi. We started yesterday. I want to just look a little at
Okay.
structure, and then we'll go to one of the other.
And I promise you I'll keep it steady on the page.
Okay. So first of all, we start by looking at how many verses there are. There are 10 verses. So again, it's not one of the really long ones. It's not the shortest, but it's it's in the short category. We notice, of course, Psalm 24 in the Hebrew, it says Perek 24 because Perek means chapter. And you'll hear people talk about the chapters of Psalms, and somebody asked me that. They thought that they didn't understand that. In Hebrew, we consider each Psalm a chapter of the book. So there are 150 chapters. We don't usually say that in English, so if somebody's using the word chapter, it's because they usually know that we call them a perek in the Hebrew. Just so so Psalm verse 1, again, Levi does a break between what he's identifying as the superscription, but he's leaving it in there so it's a part of it. But he's separating with the formatting, showing you he doesn't consider it really part of the psalm totally, but he doesn't want to just ignore it, which other people will because they really don't want it. Now, what's different than Lid David Mizmor? What's different about this superscription? Saul, you want to say it?
Every place else, it's Mizmor David.
Right. So this
Mizmor
is
comes first.
You should now know this well enough to see. Wow, what is Lid David Mizmor as opposed to Mizmor Lid David, which is what we usually hear. We usually see a song or a psalm of David. Here it's Lid David Mizmor. There are many commentaries of it. We'll come back to that. So let's just look. I'm going to do a quick overview, and then I'll break for some questions or comments, and then we're going to do another psalm. So, La Yud He Vav He, to the holy. So in this case, it's to God, Haaretz Umlo'o, to God, to the Holy One, to the Creator of us all, Haaretz, the earth, Umlo'o, and everything that fills it. Tevel v'yoshveva, the world, v'yoshveva, and everything that lives within it or dwells within it. So you can see the biblical parallelism. Tevel ta haaretz, and umlo'ah to v'yoshveva. So what belongs to the one who has created all of us? The earth and everything that fills it, the world and everything that dwells within it. So nothing escapes from this definition of what is part of the holy of holiness. Kihu al yamin yisad. So now notice what Levi does is that he switches from, it says here, because he is responsible for founded it on the waters, on the seas. Levi changes it to you to avoid the he. The al neharot yichonenaha, and established or made firm the rivers. So here, this is water. We have seas and rivers. So a lot of nature in this. Mi ya'aleh bahar yudhe vavhe. Who will go up to the mountain of the holiness? Umi yakum, and who was able to stand bimkom kodsho, in a holy place? That verse should sound familiar to you because we read a question like that back, I think it was 15 14 or 16. In Psalm 15, yes. Psalm 15, remember it says, Yud He Vav He, Mi Yagor Be'olecha, who will live in your tent? Umi Yishkon B'har Kodshecha, and who will dwell in your holy mountain? This is a feature of some Psalms to ask the question, as if to ask all of us, when can we enter holiness? How do we do it? And then the Psalm often answers with descriptions of characteristics that are aspirations for us as human beings to achieve in order to be able to enter into holiness. Niki chapayim, clean hands, literally clean hands, uvar levav, and an honest heart. Asher lo nasa, one who does not lift up or raise up, lashav nafshi, lies or what do they say here? Or falsehoods to deface my name. Nafshi is my being. So this is the Holy One speaking. Velo nishba lemirma, and who doesn't swear. Mirma is deceit or evil or something like that. Yisav racha. So those are the negatives. Who is capable to enter into holiness? Someone who has clean hands. And again, this is aspirational. This is giving us a sense of where. Notice it's not just about ritual practice here, right? It's not just describing somebody who's machmir on kashrut. These are ethical descriptions of what the Holy One is looking for here. 5, verse 5. Yisav racha, the one who lifts up blessings, me'et from Yud He Vav He, utzdaka melohei yisho, and justice. So these are all, it's so interesting, right? That the one who brings justice, melohei, from the Holy One who will deliver, who delivers. 6. Ze dor dorshav. This is the Dor Dorshav, the generation of the seekers. We'll talk about the Mevakshe Fanecha Yaakov Selah. The seekers, those who are looking, this is why we understand it's aspirational. Those who are seeking, meaning it's a path of journey of looking. Those who are seeking, again, he changes the pronouns a little bit in order to avoid the gender stuff, which is, people will make different choices with that. The one who is seeking, who will look for your, no, he doesn't, he's not here, I'm sorry. Who will look for your presence. He does it in the first part of this. Dorshav is his seekers, but he's changing it to you. Who will seek for your presence. Your fanecha is your face, literally, your presence. Your Yaakov Selah. And again, Selah is some kind of coda. Maybe it's a musical indicator. And he doesn't translate, Levi doesn't translate him. Now this is the part of the psalm that's sung when we open up when we return the Torahs. And some say that this I think Alter talks about that. Some think that this was a separate psalm. Nobody knows. I actually like the whole of it, so it works for me. And this is the part that's focused on for Malchiot, for majesty, for the sense of majesty. Su'u sha'arim rashechem. Raise up your head, rashechem, your heads. Sha'arim are gates. So su'u sha'arim, raise up or open up or raise up your gates, your heads, literally. Vihina su'u, and open, let yourselves be raised up. Pitchei olam. Openings of eternity. Here they translate it as doors or some kind of eternity. Vayavo melech, and the Holy One of honor, kavod, will enter. Mi ze melech hakavod. Who is the melech, the sovereign, the king, the ruler of honor, here of glory? Adonai Izuz v'gibor, the Holy One who is strong and mighty. Yud He Vav He Gibor Milchama, the one who is strong in war or battle. And then it repeats, Su'u sha'arim rashechem. Usu'u pitchei olam. Raise up your heads here. It says, O regal gates, raise up the door. V'yavo melech hakavod. The repeat happens here. And then the change so verse 9 is the repeat, and then verse 10 is the coda, the end of the Mihu ze melech hakavod. Who is this ruler, sovereign of glory? Yud he vav he tzvaot, the Holy One of, sometimes it's hosts, hu melech hakavod selah. This is the Holy One, selah. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the 10 verses. You get a sense of the rhythm and the question. The first pass of the psalm is about us, so to speak, right? How we can enter into holiness, and the second part describes this holy place and holy sovereign, and you'll see how the commentators and interpreters look at that really differently. And again, I go back to, I think it was, we talked about Fisher's understanding of sovereignty is very important for this psalm. Okay, let's take a couple of questions.
Oh, they're lining up already. Jeremy Lawrence first.
Hi, that's actually left over, but the question is, my question is, and I guess it's a question that other commentators are asking, is raise up your head, your heads, O regal gates, let yourself be raised up, O doors to eternity, let there enter the ruler of glory. It seems like we've been talking about what you just said, Rabbi. We've been talking about our aspiration to enter the gates, but here it starts being Adonai entering the gates, Adonai's self.
So let's hold on to that. That's one of the big questions about this psalm, and we'll look at how different people resolve it or approach that, but that's a really good insight.
Ben Shafran.
And that's why some people say it's two different psalms. That's one way that some interpreters or scholars approach this.
I mean,
Ben, yes.
I want to make a couple of comments. First, in terms of the Hebrew text, it's probably one of the most majestic and beautiful psalms that there is. The poetry is just superb. But I want to say that this particular translation by Levi, Us'u Pitrei Olam, that he translates it as goes to eternity, I think he misses an opportunity over here. You could say Pitrei Olam is goes to the universe.
Uh-huh. That's fantastic.
Which then implies two things. First, the universe is everything that there is, and yet there is a region beyond it inhabited by the divine.
Beautiful. Love that, Ben.
And
I love that.
it seems that he missed an opportunity to really grasp the beauty of the Hebrew.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't disagree with you. The Hebrew here is magnificent. This is really the very heightened, beautiful Hebrew. And I love Levi says in his commentary, this is a psalm you could say standing at the Grand Canyon. This is a psalm to say when you encounter a natural, spectacular, glorious, beauty on an enormous level as opposed to a small. And I think the Hebrew gets to that. Thank you, Ben. And we are going to look at how other people do it, because what we're pointing out here are tensions in translation and interpretation. I'm not advocating Levi is the right way. This is the introduction to it. But I agree, Ben. I like that reading of yours very much.
Jerry Siegel.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in the fourth verse where he's, if I got this right, Nafshi was translated by Levi as my name. And it's, Nafshi is my soul, isn't it? Literally.
Well, soul is a modern Hebrew. Nafshi, nefesh in biblical Hebrew means being. It's not a distinct soul definition in biblical Hebrew. So it can mean being wholeness. It's not separated. The soul is not separated from the body.
Thank you.
We're going to see people are going to translate that very differently because it is a little confusing how to do that.
Rabbi, in chat, two questions about the text. Randy Axelrod asks the wonderful question, what are tziva'ot? Who are the hosts of heaven?
Yep. So that's a big question. Let's hold on that till we look at some of the other translations.
And Jack Neiman just said the smaller word here for door, there are two versions of dorsho and then dorshav.
So that indicates a scribal problem. And what it means is that there are some words that are given to us as was transmitted, but we read them differently. So so there's what he's saying is that the way that it appears dorsho is how it is not the way that we read it. We read it dorshav.
But there's a note in that in altar also.
All right, let's look at Stephen.
Wait, Saul Zalkin has had his hand up.
Sorry. Okay, then we'll look at Stephen Mitchell.
So in verse 4, in the second line, what Sarah Siegel talked about, nafshi, the rest of the poem talks about God in the third person. And then all of it as if David is writing and saying, who can do this? And this is what you have to have and all of that. And then all of a sudden in verse 4, it's God is speaking. How is that?
Yeah.
You know, it's like when I read it and I read it and I read it and I said, this has to be an error. But it's not. I understand it's not.
Hold on to that. That's great. Hold on to that.
All right.
All right, let's look at Mitchell. I'm going to hold off on other comments until because I want us to start looking at seeing how others are dealing with some of these things.
All right, hold on. Mitchell on the way.
Now, remember, Mitchell doesn't doesn't focus specifically on the architecture, doesn't number the verses. Let's go of the superscription. Can we have somebody read that out
loud? Linda Solomon has her hand up. Linda, go ahead.
Okay, Psalm 24, the earth belongs to the Lord, and everything on it is his. For he founded it in empty space and breathed his own life breath into it, filling it with manifold creatures, each one precious in his sight. Who is fit to hold power and worthy to act in God's place? Those with a passion for the truth, who are horrified by injustice, who act with mercy to the poor and take up the cause of the helpless, who have let go of selfish concerns and see the whole earth as sacred, refusing to exploit her creatures or to foul her waters and lands. Their strength is in their compassion. God's light shines through their hearts. Their children's children will bless them, and the work of their hands will endure.
So I think you can notice here that Mitchell, as a poet, is going after one question or one direction that the psalm raises. His interest is writing a psalm that answers the question. So you notice it's basically the first verse is separated from that second verse. The first verse is the first part of the psalm about creating this imagery of everything belonging to the Holy One. And notice that he goes back and forth with gender, which is interesting in this psalm, that he sometimes talks about God in the he, he, and then at the bottom of page 14, you can see he refers to God as her and she. And then the second verse, who is fit to hold power, goes to that question, Mi ya'aleh bahar yud he vav he, who will ascend to God's mountain, umi yakum b'mkom kodsho, and who will stand in God's holiness. And then the rest of the psalm for this verse for Mitchell is about answering that question, riffing off of the original psalm, but really trying to, oh, I see you read her as the earth. I see, that's interesting. Maybe that's true. That might be true. Oh, I didn't see that. I think you're right. So, but it's all about answering the question, who will be the one to enter to what are the aspirational? And then for the end of Psalm 24 for Mitchell, kind of skips up the whole part about the gates. You notice that? He kind of skips that part. And he goes right to the part about who will be the Dorshav, who is going to be we're talking about Dorshav, the generations. And in some ways it seems like Mitchell ends the psalm there. He he is taking what Alter says that there are two psalms, and he's just focusing on the first part, the first psalm, because he doesn't. That's what as his personal offering. That's where he wants to stay. So I think that's an interesting commentary by him. So let's take a couple of comments on Mitchell, and I think you're right about her being the earth.
Linda Solomon had her hand
Not
up from
capitalized.
before. Linda?
Yes, hi. My question really was about the use of in Levi of and I guess in the Hebrew of Yaakov, Jacob. This is Jacob, and where is Jacob the one speaking? Is Jacob the one that they're describing as the faithful one who could come in? You know, I had a question about that.
So and you notice that Mitchell's not interested in that whole question.
I know.
So Mitchell chooses not to deal with it. Just like many of you, when you're writing your offerings, there might be a thread of the psalm that's more significant to you, or resonates with you, or it's something you want to explore. It's a totally legitimate thing. Probably, I would say, remember we talked about Jacob as Yaakov appear. Yaakov usually appears, I mean, nobody knows for sure, but many commentaries talk about Yaakov as being the seeker who becomes Israel. Remember the stories that we looked back on Yaakov? Yaakov is the one who becomes Israel and is the seeker that becomes Israel. So is often kind of pointed to in the Psalms as the ancestor of ours who models for us what it is to become Israel. Kind of the one who is the seeker, the one who changes, the one who goes on a journey. Yeah, that's what nobody knows for sure. Again, there's nothing definitive. We can all only create more midrash to explain. I'm giving you what the kind of consensus is of a lot of scholars, but it's not. They're no more right than a theory you would come up with, Linda.
Lori Spear?
I was interested in how Mitchell chose such a different interpretation of verse 3, because in Levi, my sense is who shall ascend to the mountains of Adonai, who shall stand in your sacred site. I have the feeling of a person in awe at the top of the mountain, maybe in silence in the presence of God. And then Mitchell, who is fit to hold power and worthy to act in God's place. It's such a different dynamic.
Right, Mitchell's in some ways asking what is he's understanding that, and again, Mitchell's not interested in trying to do a perfect translation. He's trying to do an interpretation. What does it mean to him? And for Mitchell, he's trying to understand what does it mean ascending the mountain, and for him, it's talking about leadership. Like, who ascends mountains, right? It's Moses, mm-hmm. And so I think he's talking about who is fit to be a leader and act in God's place, meaning who is going to lead in this world by acting in God's place. I think this is what Mitchell's getting at. And he's saying these are the characteristics of somebody who's fit to be a leader. And if you don't have these characteristics, this is that you're not fit to be a leader. I think that's Mitchell's reading of the psalm. And so he's looking for the ascending the mountain as a metaphor that he's understanding as a metaphor for leadership. Not all interpreters, that doesn't mean this is right and something else is wrong. I'll say that over and over and over again. This is Mitchell's interpretation. That's why it's fun to look at so many of the different ones and see what they say to you, and some will resonate and others won't.
Speaking of which, we have no more hands up. We could go to another one if you wanted to, Rabbi.
Yes, let's go to look at another one. We're going to kind of boogie through a few just to see. And again, just like we've seen, you can write a personal offering. The psalm can mean something different to you than you imagine the original psalmist meant. That is okay. That is not the point. As a student of the Psalms, you want to get as deep into trying to understand original intent because it opens up what it means. But then you have these Psalms are prayers, they're poems. They can then mean something very different for you. Okay, we're looking at Fisher next.
Sure, next. And we need a reader. Lori Krotman is back from her surgery. Lori, do you feel up to reading for us? Lori? All right. All right, is there someone else then that feels fit? Just raise your hand.
Aura has her hand up.
Aura.
I could do it, Harold.
Okay, Lori can do it. Lori, welcome back to class.
Welcome back,
Thank you.
Lori. Welcome back.
Sorry, I was left-handed unmuting. Okay. All the earth and all that fills it belongs to you, and the earth and all that lives is yours. For you have arrayed it upon the dark waters, upon the rivers you have set it firm. Who shall ascend your mountain? Who shall stand in the place where you stand? The one with open hands, the one with a quiet heart, the one whose soul is not lifted up with lies, nor deceit, seduction, nor heedlessness. That one will be moved along with your blessing, will be fortified with your rightness, and will be kept whole. This is the circle of those who love you, who search out your presence, Jacob's family, those who journey. Raise your heads, gates. Be raised wide, everlasting doors. Let the fire enter. What is this fire? It is you, powerful and final, decisive in all things. Raise up your heads, gates. Raise open wide, everlasting doors, and let the fire in. What is this fire? All in all, this is the fire. All in all, this is what burns ever bright.
Thank you.
Okay, quite different, huh?
Yeah.
So thoughts about this, and if you have the Fisher in front of you, it might be a little easier as well, but if you don't, let's look at it on the screen. So again, notice Fisher leaves out the David, Mizmor, superscription's not important to him, counting the verses aren't. And let's
Where
talk.
does the fire come from?
Where does the fire come from?
I don't know. That's not in the Hebrew, right?
Not literally, no.
Okay.
The burning bush.
Interesting. Let's look at it. So other people want to respond to this?
I'm waiting for hands. We've stumped the class. Oh, Lisa Brown.
Hi, my apologies for not being on camera today. I actually had a comment previously about the Mitchell, which is that he really quote for Psalm 23, Psalm 24 rather, he really takes from his commentary on Psalm 15 that was mentioned earlier, the similarities between Psalm 24 and Psalm 15. And Mitchell really takes his terminology from his interpretation of Psalm 15 and puts it nearly verbatim, it's different, but nearly verbatim into Psalm 24, which I find very inspiring and interesting as well.
Very interesting. Thank you. I hadn't noticed that.
Ben Shafran.
Yeah, I just want to respond to your question about the fire. All of Exodus is full of references to the divine as being on fire, the burning bush, the column of fire at night. I think it just goes right back to the source.
But the word there, people are right. The word fire is not in the Hebrew. It's definitely a interpretation of him of what this is about and where.
It's
and
an
what kind of
interpretation
fire.
of, there's a reference to God,
Yep.
and he interprets it as fire.
And then Lori Spear, another question about a particular word. Lori Spear said, can we talk about the meaning of kavod in the Hebrew?
So kavod is a very interesting word. In modern Hebrew, it's pretty simple. It means honor. In biblical Hebrew, kavod could actually also refer to God's presence. So in Exodus, as Ben said, there is a cloud that follows the Israelites around, and it's often referred to using the word kavod, meaning God's presence, not just honor or glory. So it has a holy, a divine sense to it in biblical Hebrew. It could actually refer to God's presence. Notice also in this that he does use Jacob here, and he talks about this is the circle of those who love you, who search out your presence, giving a kind of a um, search out your presence. Jacob's family, those who journey. So it is riffing on that idea that Jacob is used as the model of the seeker and the one who's transformed.
And then Sarah Siegel says, notes the anthropomorphizing of the gates. Raise your heads, gates. Connecting heads and gates that way.
Uh-huh.
And Randy Axelrod has her hand up.
Yes, I like that too. Yeah.
I loved the way Fisher says that people with open hands and people with a quiet heart
Uh-huh.
are the ones that will ascend. I don't recall anybody else using those phrases, you know, either in Psalm 15 or this one.
Right.
And
So yes, I agree. He's using Naki Kapayim. So he's interpreting clean hands as open hands, and Uvar Levav as a quiet heart, which is a very beautiful, but it's actually not crazy for the Hebrew. You know, it's not completely out of there, but I really
oh, okay. Yeah,
agree.
I love it. I think
love it
it's
too.
beautiful.
I love it too, Randy.
Yeah.
Michael Goldstein.
Thank you. Rabbi, in this psalm, Adonai is not mentioned, but the word you is used over and over again. It belongs to you, it lives to, it's yours. Who shall ascend your mountain? Why is the Y and the word not capitalized?
I think that this goes back to Fisher's introduction, where he talks about his understanding of God and of the divine. He's not comfortable with the word God. He uses it sometimes. And if you have the actual book, it's really worth reading his introduction, where he talks about it. He says, what or who is God? The word God, with all its synonyms and substitutes as they appear in the Psalms, presents a serious problem for many. I find it meaningful and use it freely in my teaching where it seems helpful, although it is absent in Zen language and Zen is agnostic on the subject of God. But for many people, the word God evokes parental and judgmental overtones, and even worse, false, meaningless, or even negative piety associated with what they have been taken to be their less than perfect religious upbringings. In fact, the word God often seems to militate against exactly what it is supposed to connote, something immense and indescribable towards which one feels enormous feelings of awe, respect, gratitude, desire, anger, love, resentment, wonder, and so on. Even so, he has a lot of writings where he talks about God, the word. He doesn't like it. He sometimes uses it. He's ambivalent. But he does want to talk about some power in the universe. So that's what you see here.
Betsy.
Good morning. Hi. I love how this interpretation and some of the others speak of the earth belonging to God, as opposed to in Genesis, where we talk about, about the people, it becomes theirs. And this elevates, I think, our responsibility. And I think it also changes our relationship to, like, it's more of the native responsibility, sense of none of this is ours.
Beautiful.
It's ours to take care of.
Right, and I think that's there in Genesis, but many people ignore it.
Right.
It is there in its own way.
There's quite a discussion in chat about hands, open hands, clean hands, the Hamsa and the Native American open hands. And then Ben Shafran points out that in biblical Hebrew, there's no word for lintel, the top of the gate or the door. So that it may be that, like Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Yeshiva, that it's not a literal head, it's sort of a metaphorical top, head, main part.
Interesting. Love that. Okay, I think we're going to do the Lewandowski Su'u Sharim. And Ira said in his conservative synagogue you grew up with this, right, Ira? So
yes. The choir there sang this. I'm very
this is a classic choral, as Lewandowski wrote many, many, many choral settings, and this one might be familiar to you, and you could really go on YouTube and spend a long time on Psalm 24. And Lewandowski, now maybe we'll listen to Naumburg tomorrow. A lot of the great Jewish composers have written settings, and there are, you know, gazillion Christian settings. But this is the, we're going to play now. Is Chazan Naomi Hirsch on today? Because she asked me what was
I
the
believe
setting
she
I
is.
Okay, but we'll maybe put this up. But this is the Lewandowski, and hopefully I'm eager to hear if anybody here finds it familiar.
And then I have just a little housekeeping when we're
Okay.
done with the Lewandowski. Let's play
Okay.
Lewandowski. Hold on.
And this is for
Doesn't look like Hazan Hirsch is on.
It was, I think
we'll let her.
she.
We'll let her know that.
Okay, hold on. Share sound. Here we go.
The reason I chose that, although it's not the best recording and I didn't have time to really, is I like that they're using women. The Orthodox choruses only use men, and I find that annoying. So I chose this because there are women in the chorus singing the high parts as opposed to men or boys. But you'll hear there are many famous recordings of this in the Orthodox world as well. But they'll only be all male choruses. So did that sound familiar to anybody? Does that the setting sound familiar?
Yes.
A few people? Okay. Ira, have we ever done that at CBST in the chorus?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I don't think so. But it's a classic and quite beautiful, and I think it really it touches that majestic feeling of the psalm. It's not an intimate feeling; it's a majestic one. Yeah. There are many different melodies for this. It might have been Naumburg, Harriet. Naumburg also wrote, which will play. Is that Harriet or Ruth speaking? It's Ruth. I see Ruth, but I see the name Harriet. Hi, Ruth. Naumburg also wrote a very famous setting for this, which we'll play tomorrow. And so, you know, these were composed, really classically composed, choral, big settings. There are also some more folky ones, but it lends itself to a great choral setting. The words really do. Okay, Harold, do you have?
Just a little bit of housekeeping. I did send everyone the scans of the Psalm 24 translations. I've been in touch with Rabbi Rapport and with Rabbi Moskowitz. We're going to be basically working off of Safaria on the screen as they go, which is the JPS translation, because they're going to be covering quite a bit of territory in their teachings. So I have redone the library list, which is all of the books that we're to add all of the new translations we've been doing. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to scan all of the different translations of all of the different Psalms that will be covered by Rabbi Rapport and Rabbi Moskowitz. So it would be a good time to make sure that you have whatever you like in your library, so that if you want to be referring to translations on your own, you can. Sue, I am going to be emailing that library list out as soon as class is over. I just redid it. And I also have a little survey for anyone who wants to tell us what they do have. It's interesting for us to know. So that's the library list going forward, because Rabbi Report starts on Tuesday. So if there's a translation that you think you wanted to get to follow along as she teaches, now would be a good time to order it. The other thing is, with all of the joint replacements going on, I know we're welcoming back Lori, and Susan Lipson posted online that she's getting her hip replaced. I have been in touch with the Hospital for Special Surgery, HHS, and they're offering a 15% discount to anyone who mentions Psalms class. When they call them about, it can be a hip, it could be a knee, it can be a shoulder, whatever you need, they have it for you. And they told me that they'd give us a deal, because we have such a volume of business here, all right?
I also want to say, somebody posted on Facebook, there was a beautiful photograph of in Miami of two people sitting on the beach reading Psalms near the terrible catastrophe.
Allison Klein, 150.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful, that is an example of the use of Psalms when you're full of that kind of anxiety and sadness. And what they were doing is reading through the whole book over and over again, just reading the Psalms. And so that was on the cover of the New York Times, a very, very powerful photograph.
All right, and Judy Hollander. Judy, are you here? You want to make your announcement quickly? Judy Hollander said there is a lunch and learn at the synagogue.
Yes, it's going to be excellent today.
So go to cbst.org and it should be right there in the calendar, the link.
You bring the lunch.
Yeah. Harold, I am here. It's just hard. And yes, you said it all. Thank you.
Okay, you know what? Hold on a second. I'm actually going to I'm going to find that link right now and put it in. So we have, while I'm talking, so we all have it for today. It does sound delicious. It sounds very interesting. Okay, hold on. Here we go. I have your link. And I will leave this up for a minute for everyone. All right. Here's the link, and I will see you all tomorrow.
See everybody tomorrow.